Welcome, infinite beings. Welcome back to the Infinite Me.
Welcome, welcome.
We're here to chat about everything to do with living an infinite life and what that looks like. So we talk about you don't have to ascend to your powers. You don't have to awaken to them. You've already got them all. You've probably just forgotten how to use them. Or maybe you don't even know they're there. So we're here to talk all about that and how we can play with them all and have more fun with life. So
Yay.
I am Mandy, and over there is Nat.
Hello.
And we are sisters. We've had a few people sort of asking or sort of saying we're friends. I was like, no, we're actually sisters. So,
We're actually sisters.
So we have a chat every day about different topics in the moment. So we pull a topic out of our little lucky dip bag that we have here, and we talk about whatever's presenting in the moment around that particular topic that we pull out. So yesterday's conversation, we talked about, well, the topic we pulled out of the little bag was everybody is wanting the same thing. And at first we were a little bit sort of thrown by that comment, because when we wrote it down, it was taken out of context of another conversation and we couldn't quite remember what we were referencing. But what it came down to was the idea of, it started off with the topic being around the idea that everyone kind of works really, really hard, and we all kind of feel like we would like to take a break at times, but we feel guilty around taking a nap or taking 5 minutes to go and sit outside and do nothing kind of thing. And we judge that and we feel guilty for doing that, but everybody wants to do the same thing. So we talked about that concept, and then that also flowed into everybody wanting that idea of being authentic and showing up for themselves and being able to speak their truth and not have to filter what that is about as well. And so everybody's wanting that same thing, to be just accepted for who they are and to show up and be that in the moment. So it kind of covered quite a few topics yesterday's conversation.
A mixed bag yesterday. Took a bit to get into it, but persevere with it if that resonates for you, because it actually was quite okay in the end.
Yeah, it covered quite a few different.
Lost in the beginning.
Found that particular phrase kind of covered so many different areas in the end. So it went in a few different directions. So yeah, that was yesterday's. Okay. So we are doing, as we said, the infinite lucky dip, which we've just got all these topics that we've thrown into a little bag. So just things that have sparked for us or come out of our own conversations or things that are going on for us, or we've read a book and it's a phrase that sort of jumped out. So we've popped them in a little bag and we just pull one out in the moment to see what we're going to talk about. So we'll see what's going to be today. So
today is
it's fluorescent yellow.
Fluorescent yellow, the power of fluorescent yellow.
Acting versus reacting. Don't know if you can see that. It's a bit bright.
Acting. There you go. That's it. I can see it.
Acting versus reacting.
Okay. So like action versus reaction, I guess. Not acting as in play acting. No. Action.
Yeah, I think taking action. I'm guessing, I think you might have written this one, but I'm not sure if it came out of a conversation, but I'm guessing it's to do around the acting from that infinite space versus reacting from the ego.
Yes.
That would be my take on
it. Yep. Agree with that. Okay. Well, that's it then. That's a wrap. Act from your infinite space, don't react. That's it.
Okay. Shortest one we've done. 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes.
This is the shortest one yet. All right. So acting versus reacting. Yeah, I guess you don't sort of realize when you first start, well, before you start the consciousness journey and you become a little bit more aware, you're actually probably just reacting to everything that goes on around you, sort of thing. Like it just feels so little power. And I guess that's true, because the ego itself actually has no power, just thinks it has power. So you're sort of going along through life and you think that you're doing all these things, but ultimately you could be squashed in a moment, sort of thing, when you're coming from the ego space. Like your possessions can be taken away, your money can be taken away, your relationship, like all these things. And I guess we're all moving around on edge almost. So there's a lot of fear that goes on, because it's like, oh, it could all be taken away in a moment type thing. It's like, yeah, it could be. That's right. That's the point. So it's sort of like there is almost that hyper sort of adrenaline. Like I think we've talked about this before, like this fight or flight type feeling sort of the whole time. Like, and then people go through the whole adrenal fatigue, and it's probably because they've been on for years, like reacting to so many things all the time,
Yes.
and feeling almost out of control. If they were really honest with themselves, they would feel pretty much out of control most of the time. Like, and we've all been there and experienced that. That's
definitely
the earlier part of the journey.
Yes. Yeah, and I think there is that. When we say reacting to, I was just thinking like, you can almost take that to mean, reacting as like anger, being angry at someone or triggered. It doesn't necessarily mean that either. It just means reactive, as in responding to what's going on, but it comes from that ego space. So reacting could be that you just keep doing things a certain way because that's how you've always done them, or you feel like somebody expects that from you, so you just automatically go into that pattern of responding to that person in that way. So it doesn't, don't take it to mean it has to be like an angry response or being reactive. We often think that that's what that means as well. So I don't know, that just kind of popped into my head when we're talking about that. So, but yeah, I think it is just that automatic. It's such an automatic way of being because we have been that way for so long when we've been sitting in the ego space and not really bringing awareness to our patterns and our thoughts and our behaviors and why we do certain things. If we don't sort of start to step back a little bit and take a bigger picture perspective, then it's very, very easy to be coming from that reactive space 100% of the time. Like everything feels urgent. Everything feels like it has to be done now. Your kids are calling you, so you feel like you've got to respond straight away, like, or whatever that sort of looks like. We always just tend to fall into that reactive space without kind of checking in with ourselves and then acting from that, what's coming through you in the moment, what's true, what's your intuition saying to you. So that's what I would take the acting part to be, is the moving from the infinite space and giving a space to what is moving through you versus that automatic subconscious thing that sort of kicks in without questioning it at times.
Yeah, and I guess it's also is reacting to people as well. So somebody says something to you, and they may not even meant anything at all in what they said, but you, oh my God, like you just sort of jumping to conclusions.
Make it mean something.
It's just like, oh, I can't believe they said that. Like or you have a go back at them type thing. And it's like, whoa, hang on. I didn't mean anything in that. Like, I was just saying whatever. But it's this constant sort of like, there's definitely that stress energy to it type thing. Like it's very hyped up energy constantly, where you're almost waiting for something to happen. And I know I definitely had that for a long time, maybe up until sort of more recently when having these sorts of conversations, but almost waiting for something bad to happen. Like just that underlying, very subtle feeling of, something's going to happen type thing. Like if I sort of like go too much, then I am stepping into the unknown, and the unknown could be quite bad, and it could hurt me in some way or in my life and change something, really upset my life in some way. So I have to just keep this very neutral, like very mild level of control sort of thing to everything. But I am running quite scared most of the time, if I was really honest. So it is interesting to finally sort of let that go. And as I said, I think, to be honest with you, I think that's only just more recently for me to actually finally let that go, through having these sorts of conversations every day and really tapping into the infinite and going, it's not a scary space to go into the nothingness of the infinite. And that's when you do get to act rather than react sort of thing. So you actually, that's where almost the control actually, the real control actually sits, is actually to be in the infinite space sort of thing. Like it's not a scary space. It's only scary to the ego. And obviously I was identifying with that, a fair bit. Kia ora, Vicky. Nice to have you here.
Hello.
Yay.
New Zealand viewer.
New Zealand.
I think we probably touched on this in a few different talks I've just done very recently, actually, about the whole hard work kind of mindset and coming from that, and it's not hard work because I'm not talking about it because it feels true and you work, consistently on something because it feels true for you to do, but we're talking about that concept of just a paradigm we've all bought into, that we need to work really, really hard all the time. So that can sort of be that representation of that reactive mode, that we just feel like we have to be in that space and we can't have some downtime, and we can't.
Yeah.
We make ourselves feel guilty for that, which we talked about yesterday. So that all kind of seems to fit into, I think, into the ego reactive space. When we come from that, we put all those judgments on ourselves, or we feel other people are putting those judgments on us, and that's usually why we do react in the way that we do, because we think there is this either an identity that we're trying to maintain, like we're trying to look a certain way. We've put out an image that this is how we always are, so we don't want to show another face, whether that's at work. They always think that you're reliable, say, and then you're having a bad day, but you don't want to show that you're having a bad day, so you sort of just keeping up the face that you normally put on, and you don't kind of let people see what's really going on too. So that still fits into, I feel, into that reactive mode, that you're still reacting to an identity that you think you have to maintain. So it can cover so many different scenarios, I think, like the
yeah, it does when you dive into it. I've never really thought about that before, but yeah, the reacting part actually shows up in so many different ways, doesn't it? You're right, like the whole putting on the mask or the facade type thing. When as soon as that person walks into the room, it's like, oh, I'm that person again, like that. They always know how I always act. And the more aware you become, the more you actually see yourself doing that. And I was like, why am I even doing that? Like, it's just totally on autopilot, just coming up. Like, you just keep playing that same role and same story over and over again type thing. And it's like, yeah, that's really weird. But it is that reaction thing. Like, it's that automatic patterning, subconscious, don't even think about it until you start questioning it.
Yes. Yeah. I was just thinking whether this is true or not, but it was just coming to me about this feeling like the reaction sort of way of being feels like every time your focus is outside of you, looking out, and you're responding to everything outside of you, that feels like that's always reaction. Whereas when it's you turning your focus inwards and tuning into your intuition, or that feeling that's moving through you that wants to be expressed, or something you want to create in the world, then that feels like that's that acting space coming from the inspired action. So whether that feels true or not, but that kind of just came to me then about, like, it feels like everything that is outside of you, you are sort of reacting to it, because it's a story that you're always responding to. It's not actually the truth kind of thing. It's like the only truth can come from inside of you. Everything outside of you is just a projection of story, of an illusion that we've bought into. So
sort of like watching a movie, isn't it? Like when you say like that, it's actually quite interesting. I think that's a really good analogy, because if you're sitting in a movie theater watching a movie, you're not acting on anything. You're just sitting there. Like, you can't go and act on anything that's going on the projector, like on the screen. All you can do is react to it. You know, this emotion comes up, you feel anger, you feel sad, you feel this, you feel that. Like, it's eliciting emotions as you watch that movie. And that's the whole idea of the movie, is to take you on an emotional journey. And it's like, life is no different, I guess. When you look on the outside, like you're saying, it has to be reaction. You can't act on anything that's actually already in existence as such. If it is just a big movie screen that we're sitting back watching, then it all has to be reaction. Can't be anything but. It has to be eliciting some sort of emotion from you. But as we've also talked about before, when things are already manifested and they're in reality already, you actually can't change them. They're already manifested. You can't change what's already manifested. So you have to then go back into the inside and act on that, see what's coming through, take some inspired action, and then recreate and create a new reality.
Yes. A
brand new storyline, a brand new scene with new actors, or old actors that turn up differently this time.
Yes. So we can't, that can look like we are affecting the outside, but we, as we've sort of talked about before, it is always coming from that inside, and then the story morphs outside of us to match what's coming through us. So don't know, just think about that reacting thing. It's just I suppose it's different to responding to something. That was the feeling I was getting, is like, because if we are sort of playing in a story, but we see ourselves as the infinite and we are acting on what's coming through us, then it feels like more we actually then respond to what's going on outside of us. So somebody talks to us, or we have an interaction with somebody, or we're creating a project and something happens in that project and somebody consumes that project in some way and gives us some feedback or something. So then that feels like it comes more about responding versus them reacting. Like it feels like there's a difference between.
It does. Reacting definitely feels a lot more emotionally charged,
yeah,
and not necessarily in a good way.
Yes.
It could be, I guess, but it generally elicits sort of a negative type of reaction, I guess, where you get your back up about something sort of thing, and you go into protection mode. So the ego is protecting itself constantly, and it's like, oh, I can't, like particularly on social media and things like that, where things can get misconstrued very quickly. I've run a very big Facebook group a while back for house sitting, and it was amazing to see people's reactions to things like that were nothing. Like when you go back and read them, but however they've interpreted it, and obviously the written word is really difficult. But how their interpretation of different things that were said and how it gets totally blown out of proportion in like a matter of minutes or a couple of messages backwards and forwards. And it's like, oh my God, guys, like settled down. Like, really? Like,
and I
how
suppose
did you get to this place?
I suppose that does just show, doesn't it, that you're always coming from your own story and your own filters. And like you run everything through that perspective. So someone can say one thing and then two people can take it completely different ways. Someone will get triggered by it and someone won't. So it just sort of, it does just show you that we're always, well, not always, because that's, we're talking now about trying to move more into that infinite space and moving from that, but probably say majority of the world, and a lot of the time we do as well when we're not bringing our awareness and being in the present moment, but we do get triggered by things that somebody else won't get triggered by, just because it triggers something within our storyline that was quite painful, or we haven't kind of resolved for ourselves, or it triggers that ego reaction of looking for approval, or something that we feel like we're not getting that, or we're being judged, and so we're responding to that all the time. So yeah, that's true.
Louise is in the house. Hey, Louise. Here.
Hello.
Yes. Well, Louise runs a Facebook group too, so she would understand what we're talking about. But it's I guess that's the thing. Like that was always the hard thing in the Facebook group, particularly. It's sort of because it was never about consciousness; it was about house sitting. So it's like, how far down the consciousness line do you go with people and go, well, she's only your reflection, and something's obviously triggered from in your past. Like, do you want to sort of address that, which is actually the issue, like the core issue, not what's going on here and what Joan might have said to you. It's sort of like, it was definitely very difficult to navigate, and I think that's why I got sick of it in the end. I was just like, I just don't want to deal with this, because I found it hard to speak my truth, and from the area I want to come from in terms of bringing people back to consciousness and to truth as much as possible. I guess that's why I'm enjoying these sorts of conversations so much, is like, no matter what any of us are going through, whether it's you or I or somebody watching, we can always bring each other back to the truth in this sort of conversation, and be a lot more conscious about it.
I was thinking too, like if you want to see one place where ego reactions play out big time is on the internet and social media. So it's kind of just that context of typing an answer. You can't gain people's tone of voice that they're writing something in. You can't tell if they're being sarcastic or they're being like they're honestly saying that, or they're trying to get a response. Like, are they being antagonistic? Is that actually their viewpoint, and they're just being really strong, putting a strong point across, and sometimes you just take something completely out of context, and you just see all these arguments that kind of
not, and that did actually want to antagonize and stuff. We've definitely had that.
Definitely people do that for sure, absolutely, 100%.
So it is interesting in social media where people, it's almost like it's given everybody a voice now that never had a voice before, and so they're all just saying whatever they want type thing. Sometimes with little regard for how other people might be. And I still think that's okay, because we're meant to be able to be speaking up and speaking our truth. But if there's ego behind it, that you're trying to actually really nail somebody or elicit just a reaction, and then we've had plenty of people come through our Facebook group that was just purposely doing that, and I was just like, you know what, it's time for you to leave the group, sunshine. Like, it's no.
What's the difference between trying to actually have a dialogue about something versus just stating an opinion sort of thing, and trigger or be triggered by other people's opinion too, and then sort of state your case more, and it just gets more this elevated kind of conversation goes on because everyone's trying to outdo each other with the I'm right, I'm right, no, I'm right sort of thing. And it's just like that's when it's coming from ego space. You're not interested in actually having a conversation. You just want to be heard for your opinions. So it's
definitely.
Yes.
So Louise, seriously, the baggage that people are holding on to and then reacting from that space. It's true. And I guess that's the hard part when you are doing something in social media where you're not in a consciousness space. Louise said she just did a cull yesterday. That's funny. Vicky's going, block them.
Yep.
It's true. Like it, and I think this comes down. I was thinking about this the other day, and it's like I've always had this thing, probably more recently. It's like, where do I actually want to spend my time? Like if I have a certain amount of time, number of years on this earth type thing, I get to choose where I spend my time.
Yes.
And the more certain you become about that and how you want to fill that time, the less you'll tolerate this sort of stuff. And it's just like, you know what? No, sorry. Like, and it's not just for social media where you might find yourself going off Facebook entirely, or you might just really cut down how much you're on there. I don't read any of the news feed, so I generally have no idea what's going on for anybody. So I'd never look at that. But these, I guess, are all conscious choices at the time. It's just like, no, I need to stay in my own lane, focused on my own projects. I'm not going to get sidetracked into other people's stuff. If it's really important, it will come to my attention. Usually does through Jodie. And Jodie goes, oh, such and such is doing such and such. It's like, oh, that's pretty amazing. But yeah, I just felt those sorts of things were really important for me because I was reacting. I was actually, it was bringing up so much ego for me. And I was just like, right, I am going to put my foot down for myself and go, no, I am not going to buy into this anymore. I can see where this goes to. And I'm going to consciously choose where I spend my time and put my energy now with the people that I want to spend time with. Yeah. Which is all you guys.
Yes. Lucky us.
Lucky. See how special you are? Yeah, I do think it's a point at which you sort of reach a point of having more certainty in yourself and it's just like, no more. And you just don't resonate with people like that anymore. And so you sort of do just naturally move away from that. Or you just get to a point where you can't be bothered putting any more energy into it. Like you just run out of steam literally for that sort of stuff. And it's like, this is just not gelling. I can't do this. I just don't have the energy for all this. So, and I think it's great. And I think when you do reach that space, like it's literally putting a stake in the ground that says, I'm not going to do the reacting mode anymore in my life or have anyone else do that. Like I'm going to spend time with people that actually are consciously acting and creating. And like to me, acting or taking action is creating. Like it's actually creating new things in the world. New projects or new ideas or bringing things into reality that haven't been here before. New ways of being, new ways of thought. And I always gravitate towards that. It was interesting. There was somebody that I had been through a lot of work with for a good number of years. We were very close at the time. And then we parted ways. We didn't speak for quite some time because I felt the conversations were getting really repetitive at the time. I was like, it's just not gelling. And then we were traveling and stuff. So we just sort of lost contact. Then we picked up contact about, be a good 4 years, say 5 years. And it was the same conversation like that he was saying. And I was just like, and I haven't spoken to him for like 5 years. And he's just telling me all this stuff, like it was what's happening right now in his world type thing. This person's really interested in him. He's got this great body, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, seriously, dude? Like, I haven't spoken to him for 5 years. And it's just all the same conversation. He's like he wanted to pick up exactly where we had left off 5 years ago. And I was just like, I am not that person anymore. Like, and just, it was so interesting. He just wanted to keep going back into all the theory of the spiritual stuff and how profound this was and how profound that was and all that sort of stuff. And I just remember, like, I wasn't even trying to do it. I was just, what it was bringing up on me, I was like, dude, just tell me what you're creating. Like, I want to know what you're doing now, sort of thing. Like, what are you bringing to the world? And I was just like, well, it's really interesting, like, that I'm really wanting to have those sorts of conversations now, not sort of sit there in theory land all the time. I actually want to know how you're acting in the world now and what you're doing. And I
Yes.
was like, oh, that's really interesting. I really have shifted.
Mm. Yes.
Yeah, this is it's an interesting observation. But
Yeah, I think that happens to a bit. Well, we've noticed that too, which was almost a. I was just thinking now about the impetus for starting the Infinite Me and the type of conversations we wanted to have, because this is what we were actually noticing. Like, we've both been on sort of the awakening path since 2004 or wherever it was we first started getting into different things, and we've been with some of those same people across the whole journey in multiple ways, like multiple speakers that we've both, that ourselves and some of our friends that we've met through different programs, and we've gone through multiple different modalities and courses and all different things together. And then we've parted ways, and then, like, as you said, come back together again, or you have a conversation with someone 5 years later. But we definitely were just noticing that there were so many people still kind of really stuck. Like, it felt like they were really stuck in really intellectualizing everything and not knowing how to actually apply the concepts. Like, how do you actually live them, knew them backwards, like, you know, from a mindset point of view, but not actually, not that they hadn't made any shifts at all, because that wouldn't be true. But there was still like this stuck level, but almost like, I know the concept of the ego, and I know the concept of being infinite, but I don't know how to step out of it still. Like, I'm still really caught up in it, and I just have a lot higher understanding of it all and how it all works, but still not really stepping out of it and making it work for you, like, and actually embodying it and living it.
It's true. You end up just talking about it all the time. It's like, that was the thing that I was getting. Like, when we left Australia in 2011, I remember getting on the plane with Jodie, and we both looked at each other and we went, right, we've been learning all this consciousness stuff for years, a decade by that stage.
Yes.
Now it's time to actually go and live it. And we had that conversation, and I was like, it was a hell of a ride after that. It was like, it wasn't the best ride, but it was a ride, and we were living it.
Not the best from the ego's perspective anyway.
Not where I thought it was going. No, it was definitely interesting, but to actually consciously make that choice, and it felt so true for us in that moment to say that, and we've said it ever since. You know, it's like, well, it all turned to shit at times, but you know what? We were living it. Like, we were actually facing moment to moment, like, that true trust in the infinite of, like, and ours has all been to do with money. We lost a business in Dubai when we did leave Australia. Got down to very little money, and then started traveling. So instead of going home, we went, okay, well, we said that we wanted to live this. Okay, we're now down to $300 and we're going to face going traveling the world. I was like, and starting a traveling lifestyle. It's like, okay, well, this is really trust now. Like, we thought we trusted before, but holy crap, all right. And it's just worked out. Like, it's been tough at times, definitely. But always, I will say that we were living it. Like, we were definitely always pulling each other up, going, okay, well, it is shit right now, but we're living it. So that's okay. We're okay. We're still breathing. We're still here. Still living. We don't really have anything to worry about.
It is only the ego's response anyway that would be saying it's bad, or it's not good to have $300 in the bank, or to, you know, to go through certain situations that might feel a little bit hairy at times, but it's, you know, to the soul, when we really check in with ourselves, they're sometimes the most expansive moments, when we take those leaps and we have no idea how it's going to show up, like, but we just know something is true, and we have to kind of follow that feeling, and we take the leap. But that's, it is that difference between the ego kind of would judge that and make it, we should feel bad for doing that, and we might judge ourselves for sort of, oh, it feels a bit irresponsible to make that decision or to do this. But if we're following the true feeling all the time, it will, when we say work out, we, you know, oftentimes I know I would project that to mean, oh, it means that the money comes through, or you get that thing that you're wanting. And it's like, no, it doesn't actually necessarily mean that either, because as we've talked about before in previous talks, like, we actually have no idea how the infinite is going to play out. Like, we don't get to see the whole bigger picture. Like, we don't know all the moving parts that take place in the scheme of things. So we just get to see our little glimpse of things that happen. And so it's easy to make a judgment at the time, to think that something is bad, or it's falling apart, or it's not working. But always comes together, and it's always for our highest good. It's always for the expansion of our soul to move us into that infinite space. So maybe it's to take out a story out of our life because it's really draining our power from it, and that might look really painful to the ego, like losing a relationship, say, for example, or something like that. But from that soul perspective, it's about showing us, you know, all the belief patterns perhaps that we'd bought into, or the we've given our power away to somebody, and so now it's an opportunity to speak up for ourselves. So we have to kind of hold back on the judgment as much as we can, and just stay in that infinite space, knowing, okay, I don't quite see the whole bigger picture right now, but I know that the universe is happening for, like, everything happens for me. So what am I not seeing about this right now? What is this all about for me? Asking more empowering questions rather than why is it happening to me? Yeah.
And sometimes it does take time, like you react to what's going on, but then if you sort of take a step back and say, okay, maybe I don't see the bigger picture right now, and it might just take time to unfold. And that's what happened in our story. It was months later, sitting in France, and just went, holy crap, like, if our business hadn't failed in Dubai and we actually did okay, we'd still be there. That's like, instead, we're actually doing what we really wanted to be doing, which is traveling.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, thank God, like, that's amazing. Like, somehow or another, through all that crazy story that went on for like 16 months in Dubai, it felt like the world was falling apart. It actually put us on our path of our true passion. I was like, oh my God, that was so weird. How did that happen? Like, that was such the weirdest thing. And just that collapsing of the ego as well. Like, obviously, there was just so much ego involved in both of us at the time, that really stripping back of what took place type thing. Like, we were really humbled. And it's like, okay, like, now I'm seeing it. Like, I could have reacted. And I think that was one thing that we did do. I feel that we did quite consciously throughout the whole process, was that we tried to remain conscious of the process and keep asking ourselves, it's okay, like, it's okay, and why is this happening right now, sort of thing. Like, why are we creating this right now? Not happening to us, but why are we creating this? And actually just going through that process, talking it through the entire, sort of 12 months that it was really crazy. And I think that really helped, was that just trying to remain as conscious, like you were saying with your friend the other day, like, keep pulling it back to that consciousness stage, the truth. What's the truth? What's the truth? What's the truth? Like, keep coming back to that over and over and over
stuck
again.
In the story, it's helpful to have somebody else that can remind you of who you truly are, and pull you back to that.
So that you're not reacting to stuff, you're actually able to then act. Like, it did get to a stage where I just felt so overwhelmed with what was going on, and there just seemed to be no way out. You almost throw your hands up in surrender, which I guess is the right place you should be type thing. Like, I don't have the answers anymore. As my little human self, I can't do a damn thing right now because nothing seems to be working. So I don't have a solution. I was going to throw my hands up and see what happens. And so it did go on its own little journey at that stage, sort of thing. And it was like, okay, it worked out exactly as we would have loved. Now, house sitting around the world, sort of thing. It was like perfect. And if we had walked away with a ton of money, would we have gone house sitting to travel? Probably not. So, and that's our preferred way of traveling now, because it's quite slow and we get to have local experiences and we get to stay in people's homes. And so we wouldn't have actually done that had we have had tons of money. So it was sort of just every stage and everything that happened, it was like, oh, it was all leading there, like, to what you love. Like, that's amazing. Quite interesting.
I was just thinking too about that. It's that surrender concept does force you to go into the unknown, like the infinite space, versus, so it feels like the ego, the reactive space, you're always coming from that known space. Like, the ego is always coming from experience, either your experience or what it's seen. You've seen other people go through, what you've seen on the news, or it's always creating from experience that it's had or seen or read about or something, whereas the infinite is always coming from that unknown, like it's infinite potential. It's formless until we tap into it and bring it into our reality. So it's like you are forced to go into the, those dark nights of the soul, or we fall to our knees because we don't know what to do now. And that's when we sort of give up, what the ego kind of gives up and kind of goes, I don't know what to do now. And we do have to go into the infinite space then of the unknown. So that the acting part feels like it comes from the unknown, being in that creativity space versus being in the known space and putting a lot of emphasis on how much we know. Like that was definitely the space I used to come from a lot of the time, was feeling like I had a really good handle on knowing a lot of stuff, because maybe as well, it feels like definitely as I was growing up that got questioned a lot. So it was like very important for me to kind of know who I was and my place in the world and my opinion on things and things like that. So it was sort of, the ego definitely gets a hold of all of that, and we want to come from that space because we feel safe. It makes us feel safe. Like we feel safe when we know what's happening. But the infinite is where all the creativity and the endless potential lies. So if we want to kind of move into a more expanded life, which we all say we do want to do that, like it's definitely I feel like it's a common human sort of trait that we all sort of want to.
I think it's a natural trait. Like consciousness itself is expanding, and if we are consciousness, then our natural tendency, even as humans, is to expand. Like no one gets up in the morning and goes, "Oh, I was less than yesterday." Like everyone wants to be more than yesterday in every area of life.
Yeah, be the best version of yourself and bringing the best of you to the world and being authentic and showing up. So just a feeling like it. We all say we want that, but then we fall very much into the ego known space so much of the time. Like it's almost like I know I felt this too. It's like it feels like it's too simple to just be in the present moment and follow what's coming through for you. Like it's like, oh God, it can't be that easy. Like I can't see. But also because you can't see the trajectory, if you like, of those things. So the little feeling that comes through you to do that one little action, we kind of go, oh, well, that can't make a big difference. Like that's not going to do anything, so I won't do it. Like I'll just manage it from the ego. And these are not usually conscious, decisions. They're kind of very unconscious in the moment, but it just sort of feels like, I think, because we don't know what's going to happen, we don't do those things a lot of the time because we already have judged it that it's not enough, or it's not big enough of an action to sort of create change, or it's not going to work anyway, so why would we do it? To all these judgments that we do have around that, we don't follow our intuition, whereas our intuition is always true, always 100% of the time is true for us if we really followed it and just didn't question it and just moved on what was coming through us. Then we would actually have the proof, if you like, of what happens when we do follow our intuition, but we often don't give it a chance. Like we don't give it enough time to kind of to see that this is actually how life actually works, like, and how much more infinite it can actually be when we move into that space. And then we will be acting versus reacting, as we've been talking about. So.
Yeah, that's it. It's it is that simple, which makes it so hard.
We
so want to complicate it constantly, but it's that constant reminder. I guess these sorts of conversations are, like any conversations like this, are really important, because to keep up with that message every single day until it's so drilled into you that of how this works, like of how reality works, how reality is created, that it's already out there, that you can react to reality, but it's not going to do anything. That's entirely up for you. But that inspired action, and that's all it is like tuning into the intuition, see what you feel moved to do, and just do it. That's it. Like that's how complicated it actually is. Not very.
The thing is we don't actually do it. That's the it seems so silly, and I'm definitely being guilty of that. Like how many times I've heard that message, or being in the present moment, acting from what's coming through in that moment, but then not doing it, or sometimes doing it but not consistent enough where you're kind of getting the results, if you like, like to see that this is actually lead you to a more expansive life. So you get little glimpses of it and you do it for a little bit, then you fall off the wagon, and it's just more like we don't put in, at the end of the day, to be honest, like we don't put in the work. Like we say we want something, but we don't actually do it. So it's kind of, we've only got ourselves to blame at the end of the day when we don't feel like we've got an expansive life. Like we don't put in the effort to create space in our life, to create that inner space that we've spoken about before, where we can allow then the ego patterns to fall away, and we bring more awareness as to what we're doing, and we can hear that voice inside us a lot more clearly. But if we're only doing that 5 minutes out of 24 hours, then that's what your results are going to be. Like you're not putting importance on it. So it should be the most important thing that we ever do in our life is to focus on the inside of ourselves rather than outside of ourselves. But we just don't do it for whatever reason. Like we just, the ego can be so strong. Like, and we just when we are identifying, I guess, with the outside world being so real, we keep reinforcing that belief all the time that, oh no, this is real. Like the ego, we're not sort of sitting there consciously going, oh, my ego is real, but we're often coming from that space. Like we think everything is real and we feel separate to everybody else, and we don't often feel connected into a higher sort of, source, if you like, a lot of the time, or we feel that that's even separate, which we've spoken about before, that God is separate to us, or angels or guides, or however we get messages coming through. If we still see those as separate to us, then we just keep reinforcing that story that we are separate, and the ego is just going to keep running us if that's the case, because that's how the ego lives. It can only live when we view ourselves as separate and identify with this little human body rather than that infinite feeling moving through us.
It is interesting, isn't it? Like we feel like we're taking action because the outside world is constructed in such a way that it does feel real. Like it has to feel real.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the illusion's gone. Like we've talked about with the magic trick. As soon as you know how a magic trick actually works, you get taken behind the scenes, get shown how it's done. The magic's gone. The illusion's gone. You can never be ever eluded by that magic trick again. And reality is the same. Like once you see what's really going on in reality from a scientific perspective and from a consciousness perspective, then it'll never elude you again. Like but it has to feel, and this is something that Bob Scheinfeld talked about in his program, if you recall, that it's, when you come here as an infinite being, this has to seem so real that you're in this story and you get lost in the story and stuff like that, to then find your way back out of the story, out of the matrix, because that's what you came here to do. You came to have the experience, the 3D experience of walls and tables.
Experience yourself as limited, and forget that you're a unlimited consciousness that created it all. You have to you came here to create that game, to experience your limitations. So you had to completely forget who you were.
And what an incredible creation. Like when you really think about it, like if you really sat here and went, wow, when I look at my world that I've got, I can catch planes anywhere, I've got buildings, I've got everything in it, technology, like all this stuff, all the stories that go on, all the social media, like everything. And it's like, it's all a bit like the Truman Show. If you've actually watched the Truman Show, where it was all just made up. Like he was implanted as, everybody was an actor. And everything was a movie set, a giant movie set for him to play out his role. And it's like, it's no different in reality. It's exactly what it's like. So it has to seem real so that we have that experience of being a human self. And then going, oh, actually, there's a bit more to that story. It's like, not the end of the story there. And I guess that's where we start questioning it, going, okay, there is more to this story. And that's usually, funnily enough, the very thing that people say, there's more to this story. There's something else going on.
Yeah, it's true. It's
like usually the line that gets said, and it's like, like, there's a giveaway in itself. If you're saying that line, then, okay, there isn't just this story. But, I guess when you do like really see reality like that, you can't have anything but appreciation for it and feel the enormity of how that gets constructed moment to moment. Like everyone is here, like there's apparently 7 billion people on the planet. So we get told in the storyline. And everyone is having an experience of reality. And it's just like how much energy goes into creating that. Like it's quite incredible when you think about it. There's the infinite right there. Like we're surrounded by it, just even being here in the first place and thinking there's a table right there or a wall right here. There's the infinite showing up. It's like impossible not to have appreciation for it when you really feel into the truth of it.
And as consciousness expands, like as we all come to have more awareness of who we are, like consciousness itself is expanding. So we keep finding out new things about our universe, and like the universe is growing, and it's like, well, that's all just a reflection of consciousness growing as well. So it is going to keep expanding, growing, but that's still a finite experience. Like, it's still part of the human game. Anything, even when we look out to the stars at night, like, it's all still part of the human
even space
reality.
itself is still part of the created, manifested.
So I think we often look up to the sky and kind of go, well, like, that's the consciousness, that's God. Like, we kind of, but it's like, no, it's actually still part of the human reality. Like, it's still part of the finite experience. Like, the infinite is, there is no beginning, there is no end. Like, it's everything, and it's so hard to get like, it's not a concept we can ever get our head around. Like, it's not meant to be known. Like, it's the more we try to understand it, it's like the more we'll confuse ourselves as well. So it is about being okay in that unknown space and just knowing that it's there to tap into. That's where the infinite potential lies. But it isn't, like, as I said, that there's something about that whole space thing, because I know that for me has always been almost like a connection point. I kind of feel like, oh, that's it. It's like, no, actually, that's still actually fine. I just thought there is an end.
Still created.
That, like, there is like whereas the infinite has no beginning, no end. So it's kind of, it's even bigger than that, like, concept when you think about that. It's like,
that's it. And like, there are other, so they say, other universes. There's not just one universe. There's actually multiple universes. And it's like, oh my God, when you've got to start getting your head around that, I was like, holy crap.
Yes.
But it's I guess it approximates the infinite when you look into space and you look between the stars into the supposed nothingness and the darkness.
Yes.
It's like, okay, that sort of approximate what it's like. And I guess that sometimes is enough, if you can drop into it, is enough to actually bring out that feeling of the infinite, because it is a feeling that sits inside of all of us. And it's there whenever we want to tap into it. And I guess that's why we do things like meditation, or even going for a run, or looking into space, or dancing, or listening to music, or whatever, like all those different things. And we did a live about that, like, how do you have the infinite, like, what sparks the infinite in you, sort of thing. Creativity and drawing, getting lost in a project for hours. They bring out the, the human forms, bring out the infiniteness in us at different times, and we get to have an experience of what it actually is like. To be our true self. So
I think even that, imagining space and the vastness of space, I guess, and we often feel, so it gives us like a sense of how small we are, if you like, as our little human self when we look out to the vastness of space and the universe. But it's also a good way, I feel, sort of to give you some perspective too on, like, the ego and the human story as well. So, like, if you can keep drawing your focus out further, like, imagine your consciousness as the size of the room, and then the size of, like, the city that you live in, and then, like, you're actually doing that. You sort of think, oh, I'm making that up. It's like, no, that is your consciousness. Your consciousness doesn't just live in your body. Like, it's as big as you can imagine. That's how big your consciousness is. So the more that you keep expanding that out, and then you look back at yourself and or your, maybe you've got a drama that's going on in your life, and you sort of look back at it from that perspective, and it just looks like this tiny little speck in the ocean. It sort of just gives you perspective of, that's actually how small it actually is. Like, it's kind of and I'm giving it so much power. Like,
to the infinite perspective, it's like,
what are you worried about?
Really?
But it is that as something we've spoken about before, about nothing is ever bigger than you. Like, there is that, we often feel like problems are bigger than us, or stuff that we can't work out, like we're just can't get out of a certain situation, whether it's a money story or it's a relationship drama. But we often think that that problem is bigger than us, like, but it can never be bigger than us. Like, we're the ones that created it, so we're always bigger than it. So the more we can draw out from that and see it for what it is, and how, the infinite is always going to be exponentially larger than that little issue that's going on, then we can actually start to move from that acting space rather than the reacting to this tiny little thing that's a little speck in the ocean at the end of the day. So put things into actual perspective of what's truly going on.
And I think that does help with the not reacting to things, when you can take a step back, take a moment. They always say count to 10. If that works, do that, because time giving something time actually is giving something space.
Mm.
And it stops a reaction. Like you can just take a breath, take a moment and go, okay,
Yes.
I could really react right here, which would just be purely out of what I've always done, my programming, or I could do something different right now.
Mm.
And in that moment, you have a choice.
Yes.
And something will drop in. Like if you start to suddenly question, like, oh, I could react in a different way, or I could act in a different way right now. And then suddenly something will drop in, like you've given it space to drop in then, and for something to be different.
Mm.
And that's how we change our reality. That's how things do shift and change into new ways of being. It's cool.
Yep. Yes.
There you go. Who thought we could talk for 50 minutes on acting versus reacting? There's a lot more to it than I expected, actually. That was quite cool.
Yeah, it's true, actually. It was, which is always cool.
Yeah,
yes.
really good.
Going into the unknown space, you never know.
Oh, I like these little explorations. They're quite cool.
Well, let us know how today's conversation has landed for you, if it's sparked anything for yourself, or you can see the difference between acting or reacting in your own life, and how you can be moving more into that infinite space of acting from what's coming through you versus reacting to that story outside of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Let us know. That'd be cool. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see you tomorrow. All right.
Yeah.
Act infinitely now.